in Jerusalem with Shmuel, a taxi driver. Young 28-year-old father, he can be found for the most part on the roads of the holy city. One day someone asked him to drive him to Haifa. 2 hours after being on the road, the taxi reaches its destination. The client pays and Shmuel is about to leave. But this very moment he notices a poster conveying the passing of a lady named Shoshana Rachminov, whose 7 days of mourning are taking place this week in Haifa at a given address. He starts to pull away, but he only makes a few meters, and then suddenly he stops his car. Strangely, the name Shoshana Rachminov does not leave him, for a reason that he is unaware of. Yet he doesn't know any Shoshana, and he had never heard the name Rachminov before. He doesn't have either family nor friends in Haifa. He barely knows the city, and even less this neighborhood. Shmuel continues his trip, but only a minute later he breaks again, almost involuntarily, without knowing why. Quite confused, he goes back to stare at the poster, reading this name, Shoshana Rachminov, which inexplicably attracts him. Finally, he decides to go offer his condolences to the mourners, hoping that it will release him from this strange feeling. He arrives, parks his car, and starts thinking, but what on earth will I be saying to the family? I'm not their relative in any way. I don't know their mother, and I won't be able to answer when they'll ask me who I am. They'll most likely think mistakenly that I came to just take advantage of the meal. While he's considering to leave, he sees two men in front of the mourner's house. And then once again his legs take over. As if he's attracted by the place, Shmuel gets out of his car, joins the two men, and enters the house of the Rachminov family on their company. In the beginning, no one pays him any attention. But after a few minutes, he notices that the mourners give him strange looks, just like he had feared. Highly embarrassed, Shmuel starts praying that no one would come ask him what he is doing here. After a while, a man approaches him. Filled with shame, Shmuel gets up to leave, but the man makes a gesture telling him to stay and asks him, "Did you know my mother?" And then all eyes turn towards Shmuel, who doesn't know what to do with himself. Left without a choice, he decides to tell the truth. "No, I didn't know her. It may seem strange to you, but I have no idea what I'm doing here. My name is Shmuel, and I'm a taxi driver from Jerusalem. Half an hour ago, I dropped someone off here before noticing your mother's passing. And I suddenly had this uncontrollable feeling to join you. In any case, I offer you my condolences and really relate to your pain." The son smiles and tells him, "May Hashem bless you. Welcome to our home. Since you came all this way, I will tell you about my mother. She was a very simple, discreet, and warm woman. She loved to do kind deeds to the extent that several times a week, she would go to a hospital to rejoice with children who had been victims of a car accident. She would bring them gifts, candies, and bless them with all her heart as if they were her own kids. She could sit next to a baby's bed and recite Tehillim for hours until his recovery, before reaching out to their mothers and comfort them. Last week, she was going to an institute carrying children suffering from heavy handicaps when a driver hit her in full force. She left this world doing what she loved doing most, chesed. This moment, Shmuel feels a great inner joy to be able to console this family, even though he still does not know why. Shortly after, he leaves the mourners and goes back to Jerusalem, caught in his thoughts, unable to find the least logic of this story. Once arrived, he feels the need to tell everything to his father, a righteous man possessing a great fear of heaven and who always has the necessary advice suited for all situations. After listening to his story, he tells him, "My son, there's no coincidence. A man's legs lead him wherever he has to go. If you went there, you can be sure that it's for a good reason. Have trust in God, and I'm convinced that very soon everything will be clearer." Reassured by his father's words, Shmuel goes back home, when suddenly his phone rings. "Hello, Shmuel? This is Rachamim, Shoshana's husband. Your taxi company gave me your phone number. I thought that you coming to our house this morning couldn't be a coincidence. I have a question for you. Were you ever injured in a car accident?" Shmuel has suddenly difficulty to breathe. He answers with great difficulty, "Yes, it happened 27 years ago when I was only a baby. My father told me that my mother was walking with me in a carriage when a car driver lost control of his engine and hit us. My mother was killed on the spot while my carriage fell in a pit 20 meters away. I received treatments for a month and miraculously survived. Why are you asking me this question?" Rachamim answers, "I must ask you another question before answering you. Did your father ever tell you where the accident had taken place?" Shmuel then tells him the exact location of the accident. Then Rachamim takes a deep breath before telling him, 27 years ago we lived in Jerusalem. My son told you that my wife particularly enjoyed to rejoice children who were victims of car accidents. It was actually her whole life. At the time she witnessed this horrible scene, a woman covered with blood on the road and an empty stroller by her side. Then she saw the injured baby who was losing his blood. She bandaged him, called the emergency, and prayed with all her heart for his recovery. Shortly after, the doctor told her, "Miss, if this baby had kept losing his blood, he wouldn't have survived. You saved his life." Then she got home completely distraught. She told me everything while crying and asked me to move elsewhere because this route reminded her of this tragedy. When I asked her what she was doing there, she answered, "I don't know, my legs led me there clearly to save this baby." And since then, and until the end of her life, she devoted herself to rejoice babies who underwent this type of accident. Shmuel starts crying hysterically after hearing this story. Rachamim ends by telling him, "Shmuel, your legs led you to our house in Haifa so you can console us, and I think that this consolation is nothing but a gesture of gratitude to my wife who saved you. Shabbat Shalom."